2-1 Arsenal. Yes. Hello again, Gooners. This is the loose cannon number 80, I do believe. I might be wrong, but that's how I've been counting it anyway. And of course, we're in a famous number 14. See, I can't get my sort of angles worked out. But luckily, Santi Cazorla could, scoring 2 goals against Aston Villa today. So we've got to be pleased about that. Particularly bearing in mind that the way we went into that game, we didn't go into that game with a lot of form, did we? In fact, quite the opposite. After losing 3-1 to Bayern Munich, okay, the crowd didn't expect a victory there, so it wasn't altogether disappointing that we lost that game. But being completely outclassed the way we were, I think that was the words of Lee Dixon. Well, that really went a long way to showing us exactly how far behind we are, the leading pack. We're obviously well behind Man U, and enough about that. Of course, we've got to be pleased. We won at the virtually in the last minute, or 3 or 4 minutes before the end. We managed to win, but we'd had a lot of shots on target. Perhaps not enough. Against Villa, I really felt it was a good team performance, and it was a performance that deserved at least 3 points. You can't get 4, can you? We deserved it, though. We really deserved it. The way we huffed and puffed. Huffed and puffed, you see? I'm saying huffed and puffed. That means that we're not excelling. But then Villa are, in my opinion, a team too good to go down. But that doesn't mean they won't go down. Obviously, we said the same, many of us said the same about Nottingham Forest, and then they went down and have never returned since. Hopefully that won't happen to Villa. Got some good players. If they do go down, let's hope that we will raid them and bring some of the best players that they've got to our club. Guzan in goal had a pretty good game, although he might have done better with Cazorla's first goal in particular. That seemed to slip under his body somewhat. He did well aside from that, though. He made a few decent saves. Then I'll tell you who played really well on the right wing. He gave, virtually gave him kittens. What do you call kittens in Spanish? I remember when I did my Spanish exam, sidetracking a little bit, and it said the word for dog, and I didn't know what it was, so I put El Barco, and then when it said cat, it wasn't quite so amusing. I put La Kitty Cata. Well, I'll tell you what, he had Las Kitty Catas today. Nacho Montreal, as I like to call him. No, that's what happens every time I try and send a tweet. It changes Montreal to Montreal. So anyway, our Canadian Spanish friend really gave birth to a lot of kitty catas today, because on the right wing he was up against an Austrian international, no less. Yes, it was what's his name, Weimann or something like that. I haven't really heard a lot about this guy. He's 21, but I'd certainly sign him on the basis of that game, scoring a fantastic goal long range. But I was tweeting just before that saying he's man of the match, man of the first half at least. In the second half he faded, but scored an amazing goal. So hats off to Weimann, really good player. I thought Westwood had a pretty good game for them as well. Benteke wasn't at his best, but he's had a really good season, so he's been linked with Arsenal as well as Spurs. If it's going to be one of us to get him, let's hope it's us. He didn't really do enough, though, for me. He didn't do enough. Our defence was pretty solid. Second half, in particular, despite us conceding that goal, I put it down to the midfield. And it's interesting that a recent survey I saw on the Metro was saying that the area we need to strengthen the most is defence. Perhaps it's true we do need to bring in one, possibly even 2 players, but in excess of that, I'm not sure. Sackboy played really well. That's what I like to call Mertesacker. I want to get an image of Sackboy. You know, Sackboy from one of those video games. I want to just sort of, I don't know, extend it, kind of make it thinner and longer. And that would be Mertesacker for me. But no, Mertesacker, he played like the accomplished international defender that he is today. And so we saw the best of him. He didn't really make any errors that I can recall. None at all. At right back, CJ, the corporal, Carl Jenkinson, I think can't complain about his performance. Certainly been, when called upon, he's been better than Sanya this season, generally speaking. Although Sanya played brilliantly in the central defence position. So perhaps we'll see Sanya play there more often in future. But there's a lot of talk that Sanya's going to be leaving the club, and I'm not in a position to say otherwise. But could imagine that might happen. We shall see. And certainly Jenkinson seems near enough there in terms of his readiness to step up to the plate and play regular first team football. Then looking across the back four, Vermaelen had a pretty solid game. I don't recall him making any mistakes. Nacho Monreal, though, he had a torrid first half. Really got the run around from the Austrian right winger, Weimann. But second half, he really stepped up his game. He was having a lot of chats with Arteta. When I say chats, they were pretty animated chats. He was telling Arteta to try and cover the defence a bit better, because they weren't receiving as much cover as they should from the likes of Diaby. Diaby, a bit like me, he's a bit of a loose cannon. He has his moments, but he does drift. And I felt today Diaby did a few good things, but ultimately he was giving the ball away in pretty dodgy areas, trying to do too much when not much was required, and doing the opposite, doing nothing when a lot was required. It felt to me that I just really haven't got a lot of confidence in Diaby. I didn't have that much confidence in him when he first arrived, although he was a better player pre-injury than post-injury. He's certainly got fitness issues, I feel. I just thought, again, it could have been the injury, because he did go off quite early in the second half, and he was struggling. It seemed, with the pace of the game. He just couldn't seem to keep up with it a lot of the time. Not in the way that, say, Santos did, but yeah, he was, for a midfielder who's supposed to be covering a lot of ground, he didn't seem to be covering that much. And I wonder how much ground does he cover? Probably covers more than Denilson ever did, but does he cover more than all the rest of the midfielders? I must say I doubt it. And that's part of the reason I'm not his biggest fan. Plus, some of his passing is quite wayward. There was one point in the game when Diaby did create a bit of magic, and then he wasted all the magic, the situation he'd created, with an awful cross. But he wasn't alone in producing awful end products. Even Arteta, he actually hit a couple of really what you would call stray passes, not under the least bit of pressure, and that's almost inexcusable. You can't understand why a professional would do that. But then we say they're not under pressure, but they've been under a huge amount of pressure for quite a while, because the fans are, I wouldn't say the fans are on their backs, but the fans are very worried, let's say. And that worry transmits from the ground, from the stadium, from the people sitting down and standing up even. Some of those fans, their worries manage to get onto the pitch, and then the players don't perform the way they should. Monreal in particular, I felt he was really jittery in the first half, although he did sort it out. He said something to Arteta, and it seemed something changed in Monreal's game after he had that word at half time, because I saw him coming out and he was gesticulating to Arteta, explaining, I think, what he wanted him to do, which was to cover the runs, because Villa were quite clever the way they played the ball. It's particularly down the right, even down the left, but they were always doubling up in an attacking way rather than from a defensive point of view. They did that as well, but they were really causing problems down the flanks, in particular down our left. And Cazorla was mostly down the left in the first half. In the second half, he seemed to be pushing a bit more to the right, but when he was down the left, he wasn't really giving adequate support for Nacho Monreal. So Monreal was clearly disconcerted by this. That's why he probably spoke to Arteta. So that's my take on it. Anyway, you can make of it what you will. Obviously, it's been a traumatic week, what with us losing that game against Bayern, and what with Arsene Wenger losing his mind. Luckily, he seemed to put all the pieces back together, and he delivered a really interesting press conference, and a press conference which showed his sense of humour again has returned to him, and I'm sure he's feeling even more humorous now. Must be cracking joke after joke in the Wenger household. But for that press conference, I found it very interesting the way he said, I will beat you, to one of the journalists, meaning they're going to play a game. But there was a pun going on there. It was double meaning. I'm sure Arsene meant I will beat you with a stick. And that stick wasn't Diaby, because Diaby didn't play a full 90 minutes. But Diaby did reasonably okay in the time he was on the pitch. So I'm not gonna start Diaby bashing. That wouldn't be appropriate, and it wouldn't be right either, because Diaby did okay, not great, but who did well, who didn't? Well, no one did that badly. I thought Ramsey coming on as a sub did better than Diaby, whom he replaced. But looking through the team, as I said before, I've looked at the defence. Szczesny, yeah, pretty good. He made a couple of good saves in the first half. Second half, bit disappointed that he let that goal in. It was a long-range effort, and perhaps the ball swerved a little. I don't know, but he got pretty close to it, but not close enough. I would be disappointed if I conceded that goal if I were the goalkeeper. We'll see what Szczesny comes out and says on it. Cazorla, I thought he could have done a bit more in the first half. Second half, certainly man of the match. Deserved man of the match for 2 goals, obviously. But I thought he was quiet at times, and I wasn't too sure he was doing as well as he should on the left flank, particularly from a defensive perspective. Then Arteta, a couple of stray passes. Other than that, it was pretty solid. And we've already talked about Diaby. And then, of course, we've got Theo. Theo, it wasn't his day. Yet, he still caused them problems at times and put in a few decent crosses, which unfortunately no one was on the end of. Giroud, I thought, was excellent. I don't know why certain fans around me were giving him quite a hard time, suggesting that he doesn't have anything between his ears. Was the comment I heard from one fan, who will remain nameless because I don't know his name. So that's why he remains nameless, and so he should, because you want to protect your anonymity if you say silly things like that. Because Giroud is a very intelligent striker in my book. I'm very impressed with Giroud, and he hit the crossbar, and he hit the side netting, and he did just about everything. Not everything right. He did make a couple of mistakes. He tried shots when they weren't really on, but why not? We need to take risks sometimes, and Giroud will take a risk, and that's why I like him so much. He's a striker. He will score a lot of goals for this club. I'm absolutely convinced by it, and his work rate is second to none when it comes to, from a striker's point of view. Anyway, he's constantly closing down defenders. He never gives them a moment's rest. Hats off to Giroud, I say. And I feel like I missed somebody out of the team actually when I was running through the whole of it, but I can't think who it is. So they'll just have to be as anonymous as that person that was criticising dear old Giroud. Well, maybe it'll come to me later. Oh, Wilshere, of course. Yeah, Wilshere, he always gets all the praise, and mostly deservedly so. I thought we did pretty well today as well. Not bad anyway. Made a few mistakes, but his effort and the fact that he can ghost past players makes him look mugs, really. It's always gonna impress people, and why shouldn't it? And so yeah, Wilshere, pretty good game as well. So really, no one had a terrible game, but I thought Monreal's first half was pretty ropey, to say the least, but he certainly picked up his game, providing the cross for the winning goal. So well done, everybody at Arsenal. And just to finish off this particular vlog, I will I'll try to read on from where I finished last time. I'm trying to remember where it was. Was it in 1913? I think it might have been. Right, I'll start there then, shall I? Yes, Highbury opens for business. Woolwich Arsenal played their last game in South East London in April 1913, when they drew 1-1 with Middlesbrough. Norris, who showed himself completely oblivious to local opposition to the club's move, now began to invest big time. He raised £80,000, which included bank guarantees and loans, and far-reaching development work was carried out at the new ground. This included the levelling of the pitch, the partial erection of a new grandstand and terraces, and the installation of turnstiles. Highbury Stadium opened for business. Cash was at a premium. The builder of the stand agreed to take a cut of the weekly gate receipts as payment, and when they played their first match as a second division club, simply called the Arsenal, on September the 6th, 1913, there were still no changing rooms. By the way, I've just realised I've read this before. So let's skip to the next section. Sorry about that, anyone who's already detected this and switched off. If you've switched off, you're now going to miss the next section, which is Norris's biggest coup. At the end of the last league season before the programme was abandoned in April 1915, Tottenham had been rock bottom of the First Division with Chelsea just one place ahead. Hooray! Arsenal had finished 5th in the Second Division behind Derby, Preston, Barnsley and Wolverhampton Wanderers. It should have been a simple enough exercise to calculate who would be promoted and who would be relegated. It had been agreed before the start of the first season after hostilities, meaning the war, that the First Division would be extended from 20 to 22 clubs. That should have meant Tottenham and Chelsea were re-elected, while Derby and Preston, winners and runners-up in the Second Division, should be elevated to the top flight. But the fiercely ambitious Henry Norris had other ideas. Come the league annual general meeting in July 1919, Norris's campaign to persuade the Football League to allow Arsenal to take Tottenham's place in the top division hit top gear. In the run-up to the meeting, Norris, recently knighted, had used all his skills, especially on his close friend, league president and Liverpool owner John McKenna. At the meeting, McKenna confirmed the promotion of Derby and Preston, but then insisted that the re-election of Tottenham and Chelsea should be decided by a vote. Chelsea were duly voted in, and then McKenna addressed the meeting on the subject of the North London rivals. He argued that Arsenal should take Tottenham's place because they had been members of the league 15 years longer. He did not even mention Wolverhampton Wanderers, a team who had finished ahead of Arsenal in the Second Division and been league members longer than the London club. Norris was like a dervish as he gathered support among the members for Arsenal's case. McKenna made it abundantly clear where he stood, and it was enough to win the day as Arsenal secured 18 votes to Tottenham's 8. So we won that 18-8. Well, it sounds like some of the score lines of late. It was a staggering decision and a triumph for the arch-politician Norris, who had spent 8 months on his canvassing. Tottenham chairman Charlie Roberts was dumbfounded at the decision, and, given the ill feeling that already existed because of Arsenal's sudden appearance on Tottenham's North London patch, relationships between the two clubs were more strained than ever. Rumours abounded afterwards of money changing hands, but nothing was ever proved, and Norris's long, angular features never betrayed a hint of his coup. He looked as laconic as ever, and many just assumed that the approval of McKenna had been the key. If he thinks it is right, then it must be, was the general opinion of the members of the committee. So there you go. That's the latest instalment then. How Norris managed to get one over on Spurs, and this is described as his biggest coup, and very few of us would disagree with that. And Spurs fans obviously still incensed by it, almost 100 years later. Well, in fact, it is 100 years. Right, until the next time, I've got to say, I'm not going to say man on, because I should have said that at the start. I'll say, away! Until the next time, up the Gunners.